You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network. This is the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of Thunderquack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's Thunderquack time!
Hello and welcome back to the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of thunderquack.com, which you can get early, not every every Thursday at this point, but eventually at some point in the week, but then a week later, you can get it early on Patreon, and then a week later everywhere else that you can listen to podcasts. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
And I'm your other host, Amanda Kunkin.
And tonight we're gonna talk about all sorts of geeky stuff, but namely we're gonna talk about the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer, as well as give our spoiler-laden review of Frozen. We gave some brief spoiler-free thoughts last week, but this week we're gonna get right into it with full spoilers and review that movie. And I'm sure with The Rise of Skywalker a week away, that we're gonna talk a little bit about that as well. But let's start with Ghostbusters Afterlife. So Amanda, you did watch the trailer, right?
I did, actually. It was a lot of fun. I knew that it was coming. Like, I know that because actually, like, while I started watching it, I was like, wait, they're making the Ghostbusters? Like, oh, no. I remember us talking about this a long time ago, about how this is like in the future, like, it's like now, but it's like the original franchise and all that stuff. And that I don't know, it has a very Stranger Things vibe to it, which I'm all about. I'm very happy about that.
It's really interesting to me that everybody goes directly there. I understand why, because Finn Wolfhard is in the movie.
Not even because of that for me. But
I don't get a Stranger Things vibe from it. Except in the sense that Stranger Things borrows from Ghostbusters in a lot of respects. So it's like there's like a weird cyclical thing there, but it's just a little bit off. Like, that assessment, it kind of rings a little bit hollow for me, because it's almost, I know you don't mean it this way, but I think that a lot of people are saying it in a very dismissive way of like, oh, this is just like a Stranger Things meets Ghostbusters. And it's like, actually, it's a Ghostbusters movie told in the appropriate style, which is the style of an 80s movie. And this one happens to, at this point with what we know from the trailer, the trailer centers around these two kids and marginally features their science teacher, and the mom is in a shot or two, right? But that's not the complete picture of the movie, because we know that the three remaining Ghostbusters are in this movie. That's not a spoiler. That's not a rumor. All three of them are signed on. Dan Aykroyd, oh my God, Ernie Hudson. I keep blanking on his name for some reason. I just go to I have a hard time because I go directly to their characters' names.
Right.
And Bill Murray. All three of them are in it. Annie Potts is in it as well. There are rumors that Rick Moranis might make an appearance, but at least I guarantee you there will be a reference to Louis Tully. So like that would be your core cast from the first two films. And then Sigourney Weaver. I don't know. I don't think that she's signed on at all. But to me, it's saying that this trailer gives a Stranger Things vibe is like I said, it just kind of rings a little bit hollow, because it's not that. It's that it gives off an 80s movie vibe, and that's what Stranger Things is all about. So like I kind of get it, but at the same time, like I think Stranger Things put together a pretty specific flavor with the way that it mixed stuff up. There are a couple elements of it that I actually think are a lot more Karate Kid. I think there's actually a little bit of Transformers, and I mean like the recent Transformers movie elements in there. But the whole, like when Finn Wolfhard is narrating at the beginning of the trailer and saying like, "Oh, we're broke, so that's why we had to come here," like that's not exactly, but it's very similar to the beginning of Karate Kid, where it's like it's the mom narrating in that, but she's like explaining to him that like, "Oh, we're gonna move out to California and start a new life, and it's gonna be great. You just wait and see. It's gonna be great." And I think we'll probably end up getting that from the Carrie Coon character, the
Who's
mother,
the
mom.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's gonna be more to it than just the Stranger Things element, like just that vibe, but the element of like that element of it is more like, to me it actually feels a lot like I said, the Karate Kid thing, but also Lost Boys, the vampire movie, with Kiefer Sutherland, right? There was something about the tone that really kind of like matched that, but the whole like new kid in town, sort of like at the beginning, you can kind of tell in the trailer, it's like the beginning of the movie when he makes a bunch of friends at school, and then they take him to this whatever it was, and it's like, "Oh, what are we doing here? Oh, it's just we're just entertaining ourselves." But it's like you can kind of tell that there's a little bit of a hazing thing probably going on there, and then something actually happens, and then we don't see any of those other kids in the rest of the trailer. We just see Finn Wolfhard and then the two younger kids in the rest of the trailer, which makes me think that like he's gonna like get isolated and then go in and work on the car and stuff like that. And so yeah, I don't know, like it's, I think it's very easy to say that it's Stranger Things inspired, but I think it's like the actual logic there is that it's just gonna feel that way because Stranger Things is so heavily influenced by the movies that this is going to draw from. Like I said, Goonies and Lost Boys, Karate Kid, like Adventures in Babysitting, all that stuff from the 80s, the John Hughes and like the Steven Spielberg produced stuff, like all of that sort of stuff, I think is gonna come out in this. And then I think the other elements of it will just be straight up Ghostbusters. People are saying that they're excited to see Paul Rudd in it and they want to see him as a Ghostbuster. There's the moment where what sounds like a terror dog, the dog monsters from the first movie, puts its paw like is basically standing on top of his car, and we kind of see the big talon paw crush down on the car, and he's terrified inside. That to me indicates that Gozer is going to use a terror dog and use him as the keymaster in this new plot. And I think it'll end up being him as the keymaster and the mom as the gatekeeper, and Gozer trying to come back to Earth to get revenge on the Ghostbusters. And we'll discover throughout that's why Egon came to this town in the first place. That's what happened to him. That's where like that he's dead, and like this is all speculation based on what's in the trailer, but he's dead, and that's why that's what led to it is him investigating. Well, the mine that they go into, there's a sign over top of it that says Shandor Mines. And Ivo Shandor is the one who built the building that Dana lives in Ghostbusters, that Dana and Lewis live in. So Like there are all of these very obvious connections back into the original movie, and I think the plot kind of lays itself out if you read into those clues. I think, and the Ghostbusters will show up and they'll save the day and everything will be great and
save the day. Yay!
Yeah. So, I don't know. How do you feel about it being a movie about kids?
I've talked to you sort of about this, like, independently whenever we talk about Ghostbusters, is that, like, I don't have any original affinity with the original movies. Like, I am totally just happy with it being sort of just a good fun time, and I'm not particularly like swayed either way. So to me, it's just going to be an awesome fun time. I think for me, that's where the Stranger Things vibe comes from, is that it's going to be a movie about kids fighting something that's kind of terrifying. Because in my brain, like, ghosts are pretty terrifying. So I'm just like looking forward to seeing that, and I'm okay with it. I think because there's a precedent in my brain for that having happened, right? Where it's like, I know that can happen because it happened in Stranger Things and it was fine and it worked, right? So I think that's why I go there and associate it with that. So
yeah, I get that. It just, to me, I think that when that sort of idea comes up, I don't know. I think probably just because, like, you weren't really hooked into that part of the culture back in the 80s and 90s. But I think probably because of the fact that I have a brother that's 5 years older than me, like movies like Lost Boys and Goonies and stuff like that. Like, I was watching that stuff at a way younger age than I should have. Like, I always talk about, like, my brother, when I was like 7 years old, my brother rented the first Leprechaun movie because being 5 years older than me, he's 12 and I'm 7. And at 12, it's fine to rent a horror movie. But at 7,
my parents would disagree.
Okay, yeah, well, I think it's fine.
Yes, it is.
But sorry, I'm going to apologize because I'm going to be like clearing my throat and coughing a lot because I've got this weird like chest condition. It's not a full-on cold. It's literally just in my throat, and it's driving me nuts today. But yeah, like, I grew up watching all of those types of movies. And so to me, and I think it's probably why I liked season 2 of Stranger Things more than a lot of people. Because I think a lot of people wanted season 2 of Stranger Things to be season 1 of Stranger Things again. And that's what season 3 was. Season 3 was season 1 again.
Right.
But what I really liked about season 2 is that it actually went off into these different directions to explore these other 80s genres. Like when 11 goes off to the city or whatever and meets that group of punk kids, and that's going into a totally different genre of 80s movie, and different type of sci-fi genre stuff, from the very like Spielberg, like safe sort of John Hughes 80s movies that they explored in the first season. And I really like that stuff, but because they went into like sort of the grittier, sort of more like off the beaten path stuff, like Scanners and that sort of thing, in her storyline. And that's probably not like stuff that's not as mainstream. So stuff that isn't as, because with Stranger Things, I think one of the interesting things about it, it's funny, this is becoming a Stranger Things conversation, but that's why it's the Thunderquack podcast. I think with Stranger Things, one of the most interesting elements of it to me is when I talk to people who really like it, and they definitely connect on the right level with all of these different elements of it, but then you talk to them and you go like, well, yeah, like that's actually inspired by this. And they go, oh, I've never seen Gremlins.
Right.
And you're like, oh, because like that whole plot with Dustin in season 2 is like, that's Gremlins. Like, they just took Gremlins and they put it inside the season of Stranger Things. And obviously changed it, influenced by their own story. The Duffer Brothers are actually like, I think that their brains when they're writing stories work very similarly to George Lucas, because it's the same sort of thing where it's like George Lucas, everything in Star Wars is a ripoff of something else. He's just so good at, he crafts a world, and then he takes this thing from over here and brings it over into Star Wars, and then goes like, okay, but now it's Star Wars. And so that changes the story. Like it, but that kernel of inspiration is still there if you know that it's there, right? Like all of the Akira Kurosawa stuff, the spaghetti Western elements. Like there's a movie called, it's called Red Sun is the translation, but it's actually called Soleil Rouge. And it's about a samurai who comes over to America and essentially has to team up with an outlaw cowboy to rescue someone and save the day or whatever, right? But it's a cowboy movie, so it's a little bit more gray than that, like a Western movie. But the relationship between those two characters in that movie is very, very much the relationship between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Han Solo, of like here's this samurai and he has this code of ethics and this way of living, and the cowboy doesn't understand any of it and just kind of mocks him at every turn. And that's totally the dynamic between those two characters. But like, that's just, he just takes that piece and puts it into a movie. The Duffer Brothers do the same thing with 80s movies, where they just grab something, they grab a piece of Ghostbusters and they just shove that into their story, or they grab a piece of The Thing and they shove that into their story. And by the end of it, you've taken so many other things to influence your story. You've created characters with their own like three-dimensional backstory and motivation. And once you've done all that, now you have something that resembles a completely unique story with all of these great inspirations. But that interesting element where people like, they vibe on things that I also vibe on, but for different reasons. They just think that it's really good storytelling, or they just really like that element, or they might think that it's actually influenced by something else. Because what they're talking about is the thing that was actually influenced by the first thing, right? So right. It's just there, like, there's a weird like cyclical thing there. But I suppose that's probably just like my very specifically my film screenings class from film school coming back of it's me being kind of browbeaten when I'm like, oh yeah, that's like this, and then everybody would go like, actually it's like this thing. But yeah, so like I don't like I understand the I don't want to call it a knee-jerk reaction, because like that kind of miscategorizes it, but like the so it's a very easy conclusion to come to. Yeah. That it's like, oh, this is influenced by Stranger Things. But I actually, like, because of who's making the movie, I don't think that that's an accurate picture, because it's being made by Jason Reitman, who, amongst many other qualifications, like having written and directed Thank You for Smoking, having directed Juno, Up in the Air, he's a great director on his own merit entirely. And I mean, like, obviously nepotism plays a part in him even getting those opportunities, but I think that he's managed to earn his place in Hollywood. He took advantage of that opportunity and has made some really, really great films, and contributed to a lot of other really great films. But he's also the son of Ivan Reitman, who directed the first two Ghostbusters movies. Right. So like, you're like, and Ivan Reitman's not really, I don't think that he is credited enough with the actual sort of genius of the Ghostbusters movie, and it ending up as great as it did, because the script that Dan Aykroyd originally wrote was insane. And it's, again, like, drawing a parallel back to Star Wars, George Lucas's original script for Star Wars is bonkers. It's like, it's not a good story. It needed edits. It's all 3 movies in the original trilogy with a little bit of the prequels added in there. It's just like, it's a mess. It's a total mess of like, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea. And the best thing that happened to Star Wars is that he was given less time, less budget, and told to like rein it in and like trim it down to like by other people before it even got to like the script that he was really shopping around. Like it was like pare it down to the point where he got to, okay, I'll do 1 episode and I'm going to take it out of the middle of the story. And it'll just be about the Death Star, right? It'll just be this section that's the Hidden Fortress. In the same way, like Ivan Reitman basically went back to Dan Aykroyd and was like, because the original plot for Ghostbusters takes place way in the future. Like, I mean, it was 1983 or 84. A movie came out in 84, I think. So like this would have been in like 82, 83 probably. That they're talking about this. And like it was supposed to be like a futuristic sci-fi New York where for some reason now there are ghosts everywhere, right? And I'm sure that there was some scientific techno jargon of like, oh yeah, because of this type of energy, this unlocked this thing and now there are ghosts everywhere. But like Ivan Reitman's one of the people who came back and was like, no one can make this movie. Like, this is bigger than Star Wars. What you're asking for is like, it's like Blade Runner, Star Wars, and a million other things all wrapped into one in terms of like production cost and all that sort of thing. So let's set it in modern day. And that automatically changes a lot of that story. And then the other element was that John Belushi died. John Belushi was supposed to play Venkman. Oh. And then that ends up like, then Ivan Reitman, who had worked with Bill Murray and Harold Ramis previously on Stripes, said, because Harold Ramis was already attached, he had helped basically with the rewrites and getting the movie down to a more realistic scale. Because Harold Ramis and Bill Murray were so great in Stripes and it was a successful movie, that was now something that they could use. If they could get Bill Murray on board, they could then get this movie greenlit and get the money that they needed to make it on the scale that they could make it, and what they ended up doing. And so like all of that kind of comes together, and Ivan Reitman's really responsible for a lot of that, as well as the great storytelling beats that are in it. Because if you've ever seen Dan Aykroyd in an interview, like a candid interview, especially in the last few years, he goes all over the place. Like he makes our tangents look like brief, just like a 1 sentence. Like
detour, brief detour.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd is like, he has the mind of a genius, but it's definitely tempered by like an inability to kind of focus. And I think like in recent years he's talked about like they he feels maybe he's was undiagnosed with autism or something like that, like Asperger's or something like that, and that's why he is the sort of like, that's why he thinks outside the box and comes up with ideas like Ghostbusters and that sort of thing, and why it was so outlandish when he originally conceived it, because he just, anything that came into his mind, he just put into the script, right? But
as you
do. Yeah, exactly.
Here, this idea, great.
Yeah. But Jason Reitman talks about it a lot. He grew up just like surrounded by this phenomenon that was Ghostbusters, because people might have a hard time remembering it now, but at the time, in the late 80s and early 90s, Ghostbusters was as big as, like, it was kind of like from my perspective, it was three things. It was Ghostbusters, it was He-Man and She-Ra, and it was the Ninja Turtles. Like, those were the three biggest things because they had the best cartoons, they had the best toys. Like, that's what mattered in the world of kids back then. And then eventually it would switch over to Spider-Man, the X-Men, and Power Rangers. But before that happened in the sort of like 92, 93, in those years, prior to that, there wasn't anything bigger than Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles. Like, those were like the Pokemon and I don't know what's cool with kids these days. I don't even know. Fortnite, I guess. I was just go to Fortnite. I don't like kids don't watch TV. They just watch YouTubers play video games.
It's true.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, like, it's so difficult for me to relate because I can't understand why you wouldn't just play the video game yourself. But anyways, yeah, like, and Jason Reitman grew up surrounded by that world and directly connected to it. And he talks about it that, like, it was overwhelming at times because he was also that age. Like, he's a little bit older than us, like a few years older than us, but not much. Like, I think he's probably closer to my brother's age. But like, he was the right age at the time to be all about the Ghostbusters. So right. He was. I mean, he's in Ghostbusters too. There's a scene where they have a birthday party at the beginning and the Ghostbusters make an appearance at it. And the kids are like, none of the kids care because the Ghostbusters are an old thing and whatever. It happened years ago and now it's not relevant. And then the kids all start singing about He-Man. And there's one older kid who's like, who says that they're like deadbeats or something like that. And that's Jason Reitman. So, like, he's in one of the Ghostbuster movies. So I think he's very qualified to make a Ghostbusters movie. But on top of that, like, he understands the influences and the tone and the type of movie that it should be. And I think in a similar way to that the Duffer Brothers kind of harnessed the storytelling of the 80s to make Stranger Things. He's going to do a similar thing with this movie. So I don't know, maybe you're right. I guess it is Stranger Things with Ghostbusters. But the most important part of all of this is that, similarly to the 2016 movie, you've got a great cast full of very funny people, very good actors that are going to give good performances. But what this movie has and that movie didn't is a director who cares about Ghostbusters. Because it's really clear from the 2016 Ghostbusters and from all of the press that Paul Feig did, when he was asked if he researched, like how much research he did when they wrote Ghostbusters, Answer the Call, I think is the subtitle that they gave it, which is just awful. And that's not him. That was Sony. Sony put Answer the Call on it at a later date. To differentiate it from the other ones. But I just always called it Ghostbusters 2016. But when he was asked like how much research he did, he was like, I've seen the movie. And it's like,
yeah.
Okay, but like, did you watch it recently? Or like, and if you watched it recently, was that the first time that you saw it? Or like, have you seen it more than once? Have you talked to anybody that was involved with the original other than like when they were on set and you were already filming the movie? Because to me, it's like there are so many fundamental things that they don't bust ghosts in that movie. At no point do they bust a ghost. They get one ghost into a trap, and then they go back and they're like, well, now we've got a ghost in a trap, and it's like, there's only half of a story here because you're supposed to have a containment unit to put it into, because otherwise you're just going to end up with a whole bunch of traps sitting around. Like Like you can't just have parts of the fact that they're Ghostbusters. There's like a mechanical component to it that is all very, very well thought out. Again, because Dan Aykroyd is like he has like a labyrinthine mind full of information about if ghosts were real, this is how you would capture and contain them. And that's all in the first movie. And it's like if you weren't taking notes, then yeah, you're going to forget about the containment unit, and you're going to forget that they don't, the proton guns, like they don't blow up the ghosts. They lasso the ghosts so that they can put them in the trap, so that they can put them in the containment unit. Otherwise, you're just shooting ghosts with laser guns, which is fine if that's the movie you're going to make. I just don't think you call that movie Ghostbusters. That's Ghost Blasters or something, right? Like that's a different thing. So like that
in some ways, but sure, I get your point.
Sorry, I missed what you said.
A little bit like semantics that you are arguing
no
over.
yeah but no, I'm just saying that like Ghostbusters has like we talked about this back in 2016. Like there are a few things that you would need to do in order to maintain that it's a Ghostbusters story. Mm-hmm. It's just like, look at two movies that are really similar, okay? Like, or two properties actually. I'll go movie to TV. Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica. Not the new Battlestar Galactica. I'm talking about the original 80s TV show. The 80s TV show is totally meant to be a TV version of Star Wars. But it's not Star Wars, and there are very identifiable reasons why it's not. Not trapping the ghosts and putting them in a containment unit is the same as not having the Force in a Star Wars story. So if you were to make a Star Wars movie that outright like just ignored that part of the story of that world, then you wouldn't really, like, why bother telling a Star Wars story? You may as well just go make an original sci-fi concept, right? Sci-fi fantasy concept. As actually, I mean, like, then you're just sci-fi. If you remove the Force, then the fantasy element leaves Star Wars and you're just shooting laser guns in outer space with spaceships, right? Like, and that's also cool. Battlestar Galactica is also cool, but right. It's not Star Wars. So, like, there are just those elements of, like, you can make a story about, there are other properties where they catch ghosts or not catch, but like deal with ghosts and that sort of thing. So, but they're not Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is like, there are these certain elements to it of, like, the fact that, that they're basically just like ghost exterminators, right? So, like, how does an exterminator deal with a rat? Like, they poison it, I guess, sometimes, but nowadays you use a lot of humane traps and you remove them and you take them somewhere else. You try and deal with the problem, like the infestation, instead of just going in. If an exterminator came into your house with a flamethrower and started shooting at ants with a flamethrower, you'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Like,
I mean, that's fair. Yes, you're yeah.
Yeah.
Fair.
So I don't know. But to go back to the what the new movie looks like, I say all of that to say that, like, that sort of, like, almost cavalier approach to doing a new Ghostbusters movie, which felt to me like we got to use the license or we're going to lose it. Like, it kind of felt like one of those moves. This feels like in the exact same way that The Force Awakens felt like, oh, we're coming home to something. Like, it's, and when you come home, like the saying, you never go home again, but when you come home, there are familiar things, but then things have also changed. So I think that's one of the reactions that fans have to stuff like this, is that the nostalgia brings them in, and then when they realize that nostalgia is a fantasy, like that it's ephemeral, it's a feeling, not a reality, and that you can't go home again, they get really mad and they go on Twitter and they say that The Last Jedi is the worst movie ever made, which like you can have problems with it. It's just ridiculous to say it's the worst movie ever made, because I mean, like, Ghostbusters 2016 came out. That's a much worse movie than The Last Jedi. I'm not saying that that's the worst movie ever made. I'm just saying on a sliding scale, like, if we're going to put everything together, grading on a curve and all that sort of stuff, like, there are much worse movies. But because people have these nostalgic feelings for things, they go into it and they get mad when it's not, when it doesn't meet those expectations, right? But I feel like this movie's it'll satisfy rational fans. But my friend Carl, who hosts the Wampa's Lair podcast, he's a big Ghostbusters fan as well, because he's also in his mid-30s and a white man. So it's hard to find one that's not a Ghostbusters fan that grew up in North America, right? He and I were having a sort of back and forth on Facebook after I posted the trailer, and he was saying stuff, and I was like, yeah, this all seems really familiar. Like, we've been like, this is old hat for Star Wars fans who are also Ghostbusters fans, because this is just 2014-15 repeating itself, right down to, like, you can tell that this trailer, the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer, that they very clearly used the Force Awakens trailer as a template. There are even, like, musical cues and pacing, and I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure if you went on YouTube and searched it, there are probably already videos where people have gone, like, here's like both trailers side by side, because yeah, it's they are staggeringly similar in sort of like their the main beats of both trailers, and there's like that one musical cue that is the musical cue from the Force Awakens trailer from 2014. But that's not a bad thing. If you're gonna copy someone, that's a good person to copy. That's a good, like, method to copy for bringing something back after 30 years.
I love how much you love Ghostbusters. You just, like, talk about it with such, like, reverence, which is just kind of cool, and, like, weird stuff that I would never know. So thank you for diving into that.
You're gonna, like, with this movie coming out, you're going to know all of this, especially now, because now we have the Thunderquack podcast. In 2016, we didn't have the Thunderquack podcast, right? We had other stuff sort of on the periphery to talk about Ghostbusters in 2016, and you and I definitely had conversations, probably even on Quiver, and maybe even in other places. But but now we've got the Thunderquack podcast, which means every time a trailer comes out, I have a podcast to talk about Ghostbusters on, and that's why the Thunderquack podcast exists. This conversation is like the thesis for why we're doing this, and I'm not doing Quiver if Green Arrow and the the Canaries gets picked up, because right. I don't want to be stuck talking about that show. I want to talk about everything else cool that happens. My hope is that with Ghostbusters doing this and, like, sort of having this about face after the misstep in 2016, is that everybody who's got the rights to all of the other things that have already had their remakes, their modern remakes, like Transformers and Ninja Turtles, that they now get a second chance to go back and redo. We got a little bit of that with Bumblebee, but I want them to really get an opportunity to just start fresh. Like, just pretend like those other movies don't even exist, and let's just, because it's very obvious to me that the audience that goes to the Transformers movies doesn't really care about the story. So you don't lose anything by scrapping that history and starting over, but by scrapping that and starting from a fresh place that is a little bit more reverent of the original source material, you'll win back a bunch of the people that didn't go to the 4th and 5th Transformer movies, and then the people who skipped out on Bumblebee as a result, right?
And Bumblebee was so good, like you say.
Bumblebee was so good.
Like getting like actual story in with all these nostalgia properties.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, my greatest hope is that this means that we get a new live action Ninja Turtles movie, that isn't a continuation of the Michael Bay produced films. Granted, like I'm on the record as saying the second of those movies is actually probably one of the better Ninja Turtle movies. There are, let's see, I think there are 6 Ninja Turtle movies, because there's the original 3, the animated one, and then the 2 new live action ones. So yeah, there are 6 Ninja Turtle movies. And I would say the original Ninja Turtles movie is the best one by a long shot. The 2006, I think it's 2006. It's either 2006 or 2007. Animated movie is the second best Ninja Turtles movie. And I would actually say that I think it's called Out of the Shadows is the second of the new live action ones, is the third best Ninja Turtles movie. And that's primarily because of Bebop and Rocksteady, but it actually it does some really cool stuff. But I would love it if it was that good of a story, but Splinter wasn't a racist character that was just straight up cultural appropriation. And the Ninja Turtles didn't look like Shrek with shells. If you could fix those 2 things, which actually you could, because you could just take the plates from everything else and just replace the CG of the Turtles and Splinter and just get an actual Japanese, you know what? I won't even be that picky. I mean, I think that you should just get like one of the 6 great Japanese actors that work in Hollywood today to play Splinter, but you just grab any Asian actor. I'll even allow like a Jackie Chan or something like that to voice Splinter, because that's less racist than Tony Shalhoub playing Splinter, and him being a ninja master because he read about ninjutsu in a book that he found in the sewer. That's a little bit hard to swallow, even in a movie about a giant talking rat and his 4 turtle sons. It's a bridge too far. It's one of those things that if you're going to do a weird fantasy sci-fi story like that, you have to ground some of the story in a believable reality. Otherwise, you may as well just do random skits about ninjas punching turtles. It's nothing else needs to make any sense if you don't ground it. But I just really hope that we can get a good Ninja Turtles movie again, one that actually takes the franchise seriously and as seriously as Ninja Turtles should be taken. I don't need a actual adult serious Ninja Turtles movie. It should be for kids, but again, it's the same thing that I'm talking about with Ghostbusters. It's just the amount of respect that it gets treated with, right? And the first of those live action ones didn't treat the turtles with respect. The second one did. The second one was better, but unfortunately it inherited a lot of the problems that were established in the first one. Should we talk about Frozen now?
Sure. I feel like I know much more about Frozen than I do about Ghostbusters, so I can contribute in some sort of meaningful way.
I'm going to let you take the lead, and I'll just interject if I feel like it's appropriate with Frozen.
Oh, well, now that's too much in the other direction. Now I have to talk so much. I can't, what didn't we talk about? I feel like we did talk about a lot of stuff on the previous Thunderquack, but I guess to get really spoilery.
We didn't get, we talked about sort of larger thematic stuff, but we didn't get into the weeds on Elsa's journey. I think a good place to start is in the concept that I really hope they make it into a trilogy, because if they make it into a trilogy, if they put out a third Frozen movie where they're all together and the adventure is all oh yeah, we're all back together again, and that's the marketing, then I'll be able to relate it into the conversation going on with The Rise of Skywalker right now, where there's a lot of people who are oh, thank God, after The Last Jedi separating all of our heroes, we finally have a story where all 3 of them are back together again. And it's actually in The Force Awakens, the 3 characters are never on screen together. Like not once. Maybe there's a brief moment after they get back where Finn is being wheeled off in the background and Poe might also be there and Rey is hugging Leia, that all three of them are on screen at once. But other than that, I apparently Poe never even met Rey until the end of The Last Jedi. So yeah, like those characters got split up several times in that first movie and then split up again in the second movie. But it's like there's a reason why you do that, because then you can bring them back together in the third movie. But also, just wait, in Rise of Skywalker, the team's gonna get split up. Finn and Poe are not going to be sitting off on the sidelines eating popcorn while Rey is fighting Kylo Ren and Palpatine. They will be somewhere else when that's happening. In fact, we know that Poe will be in an X-Wing and Finn will be riding horses on top of a Star Destroyer. Like it's very clear that's all happening in the third act. But in the same way that The Last Jedi splits all of our heroes up so they can all three of them go on separate journeys to discover themselves, right? To really find out what kind of person they are at their core. That's what Frozen 2 does. In Frozen, we left everybody with a happily ever after, which is how Disney movies end. And then we start Frozen 2. This is full spoilers, everybody. So, like, I'm going to start going, and it's going to be full spoilers. This is your last warning. We start it with this sort of melancholy contentment from all three of our main characters. 4 if you want to include Olaf. I'd rather not, but actually, I'm
okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Olaf is a lot better in Frozen 2. He's still annoying, but he's a lot better. He's useless in the first Frozen. He doesn't even need to be in that movie. But he's much better in the second one. But we start in this place of like they've all kind of got their lives not figured out, but they're all in a happy rut, which is not a bad place to be necessarily. But like I said, it's like this melancholy contentment of like the first big song is Some Things Never Change. And the whole song is like setting you up for their like the most important thing is that we've got each other. And it's like, cool. So the end of Act 1 is going to be all of you being separated from one another, right?
Basically, yep.
And that's exactly what it is. So Anna is kind of like, I'm happy. I'm fine. I'm not alone anymore. I've got my sister. I've got Kristoff. I've got Olaf. And like, you know, the gates are open. The Arendelle is, everybody's happy. Everything's prosperous. It's great. But you can kind of just get this sense that she feels like she doesn't really have a purpose. Yeah. As much as she's got like, and I think her story is like she got her happily ever after, and then has to live the rest of her life. And she's like, okay, it was a lot easier to just be the queen's sister when the doors were locked and I didn't have to talk to anybody. And my biggest problem was just being bored all day. And now it's like, well, what do you do with your life, right? Right. And then Kristoff's story starts from a place of like, I'm in love with this girl. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. I want to propose to her, and he just can't figure out how to do it. Right. Like everything needs to be perfect. Right. Because she's a princess, because blah, blah, blah. He's just an ice courier. And so he's got like this kind of pressure on him to make sure that it's that he does it in the right way. And then Elsa is feeling like there's something else that she's supposed to do. She, like, we start the movie and she's attending to her queenly duties, and you can tell like her heart's not in it. She just doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be contained. She doesn't want to be which I think is the right direction, because in the first movie, she goes up to the castle, like, and creates an ice castle, and she's singing about, I'm finally free and I don't care that I'm alone, because There's no one to tell me what to do anymore, and I can just live my life the way that I want to live it after living the last 12 years or however many years hiding everything from everybody. I can do whatever I want. And then the end of that movie is, well, everything's fine. Come live in the castle again. And it's like, okay, well, she can live in the castle. She can be the queen and she can use her powers and people aren't afraid of her. But she feels trapped. And in comes a retconned voice of all of the elements telling her to follow it as the main track from the entire movie into the unknown implies, right? So that's kind of her story. So everybody they're good, but not great. Is kind of where we meet them at the beginning of the story. And Olaf is just upset because he's starting to realize that like impermanence is the nature of the universe is decay. And he's just like, oh, man, like when you're just a snowman who exists and then melts away, you don't have to worry about this stuff. But when you have an actual life, it's like you see things change and die in front of you. And he's got some pretty funny stuff about like just like these existential crises that I think we all have from time to time when we realize our mortality, which sets up his death in the movie perfectly. But then he comes back, so it doesn't really matter. But it sets all that up really well. So yeah, and then from there they go and they get separated.
And I do think that the coolest thing in the journeys as well is seeing, and I don't think people are talking about this too much, but that everybody does have an arc. One of the greatest things. So I went to go see the movie with 7 girls that I'm not really close with. It was just like a group of people that I know like through friends of friends. And at the end of the movie, we genuinely were all like, oh, we're really glad that was like finally Anna's story, or oh, we were really glad that was finally Elsa's story. And we're like, no, it's more Anna's story than it is Elsa's story. But then realizing that they all have like that they both have clear arcs where they go from one place to another, and that it is a little like, I mean, because in my opinion, I was like, oh, good, it's finally like Anna's story, and they were like, no, this is Elsa's story. And so just the fact that we could see it from those two separate like points of view was kind of cool. And being like, well, what lens do you come in at this movie? Because I think Elsa being the breakaway hit from the first movie, I don't consider Frozen to be necessarily about Elsa, because I always relate to like who is the straight man of the series and who is the one that is like grounded in the real world, dealing with real world problems, that doesn't have magic, that has to like get through. And so I think that they did an awesome job of telling us two almost separate stories where it's like the fantastical, how do you go from having magic to being basically a god, and like that sort of fantastical storyline. And then also, how do you go from being just a girl to a queen? Like they both have sort of these arcs that are like, they become greater than normal people, but they also like started in a very different place, which I just think is kind of cool. So.
Yeah. And then Kristoff gets an arc as well, but his is a little bit more understated. He kind of gets the short shrift again, but
he gets the song. Come on. Oh, again, I went to go see it with a group of like women about my age, and we all freaked out during the Kristoff song because it's so like, oh my God, 80s and 90s boy bands. What they're doing with these layouts is so great. Like, it's just so, come on. Like, with the like face and the fade out and it was so fun. I don't know. They had a lot of fun with his character.
I love that you use terms like layouts because you work in animation now. Oh. So it's funny to hear you talk about animation because previous to working in animation, you never would have used a term like layouts to describe. You would have been like this framing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now you're like, oh yeah, these layouts, they're all so great. And it's like, okay, that's animation Amanda talking now.
Animation Amanda can't watch movies anymore without just being like, oh my God, that's so expensive.
Yeah.
Why did they spend so much money on this shot?
Are you kidding? Yeah, her hair at the end.
Yeah, I know.
That whole, like, her hair, the outfit, because now, like, she's got this long flowing cape again, and it's like, yeah.
I kept thinking about her outfits. I don't think people understand how expensive Elsa's outfits are. Yeah. Like the fact that like the layer over top that has transparency that you see through to the other underlayer, like those two pieces of clothing, the simulation budget on the show is insane, because to not have those crash is like, I don't know. It's just amazing. Like, it's just really cool that they
But the other side of it is that they take 5 years to make these movies. As opposed to the timelines that you're usually on with television, right? So future's a little bit different, but I've heard from some people that they feel like this one's not as good as the original, or that it's fine. I also saw some of the early reviews come in that were like, this is a bit of a lackluster story or whatever. And I'm like, it's not. Like, the only problem I have with Frozen 2 is that it starts to veer into Pixar territory, and that it's not as bad as Pixar gets with the, like, we're gonna really exploit your, like, these emotional tactics that we can do in animation that are actually harder to do in live action, because everything's exaggerated in animation. So it's really easy to pull at heartstrings with these characters, because you can make them way cuter than a real human being, right? Or way more vulnerable than a real human being, or way more powerful, or whatever, right? Like, you can create power dynamics in animation that are trickier to pull off. So everything's heightened with animation, right? Even just movement. When you learn about animation, you learn that in order to make something look like it has weight and dimension, you actually exaggerate it. You do more than you would do even in a live action film, which is already exaggerated and heightened beyond reality, right? But like, squash and stretch is a really common term in animation, and that's sort of the idea that that everything kind of has like a bounciness, like a fluidity that we don't necessarily see in reality, but that actually gives us the impression that back in the day, lines on a page, or now basically pixels on a screen, are actually moving. And have weight behind them, and dimension, and all that sort of thing. And like antic motion, where a really good example of that is in the first Frozen, when Anna punches Hans at the very end of the movie. They actually kind of they use it, and then they pull back on it for effect. Because normally, like in the beginning of her punch, she goes to punch him in the face. She draws back really, really far, and her arm kind of almost like rubber bends a little bit further back than it should, in order to get the force to punch him in the face. And then they do the opposite of what you would normally do in animation, and instead of her hand squashing when it hits him, like sort of getting a little bit of like a rubbery effect when it hits him in the face, and his face doing that, and having a little bit more follow through, her fist actually just stops right where his face is, and he just flies backwards. And it gives it, like, it plays with the animation, and then straight into like a real punch, like a real human punch to another human's face. That sort of plays on our expectation. But like, so like, animation can do that. Reality, it's harder to do that unless you're making The Mask, which is just CG characters doing that, right? But
yes,
yeah, but they kind of start to veer into that territory with the more mature storytelling, and going away from it being an actual kids movie. Like, I think Kara, who is at this point almost 3.5, she could tell you the whole plot of Frozen, and granted, she's seen it probably about 100 times at this point, but that's not an exaggeration. She's probably seen it about 100 times.
Wow.
she just keeps going back. I mean, now that she's got the shorts from that they did in between, she watches those more often right now because they're still newer to her. And when Frozen 2 comes out on digital and we get it for her, she'll probably just watch that over and over and over again. But even right after the movie, she had parts that she liked that she could tell you about. But if you asked her what that movie was about, like what the plot was, she wouldn't be able to tell you right away. But like she's my daughter, so she's very good at following the plot of a movie because I've been taking her to movies since she was a year old, right? So a lot of the time she surprises us when she watches a TV show or a movie or whatever, and then like 2 days later she tells us, we'll be driving in the car and she'll be like, and then Kermit and Fozzie get in the car and then they drive and they see Big Bird, and you're like, it's like a 2-second interaction in the Muppet movie that she saw like a year ago and she remembers that stuff. But with Frozen 2, because so much of it was like this sort of like heady, depressing, mature adult storyline, she just didn't connect with that part of it. So what she talks about when she talks about that movie is she talks about the horse and she talks about Olaf and she likes it, and she only Cara, and when Cassie is in the car as well, they're the only ones who get the privilege of hearing me sing along to Disney music. She really likes it when I sing Kristoff's song. And she also likes it, but we also Love is an Open Door from the first Frozen. We sing that one together. So it's like it's natural progression, right? But like that's really like those are her takeaways from the movie. And when I talk to her about like, yeah, but isn't it really cool when Elsa learns about her family and then she transforms and she gets her new outfit, and Cara will just go like, and just kind of shrug. And I'm like, because to me that's like such an impactful moment in the movie. Everything builds up to she's following this voice and she's learning that she can calm all of these elemental spirits, and then she gets to this cave and discovers that like that she thinks that she's going to find the fifth spirit, right? This spirit that can control all four of the elements. And she gets there and she sings the song Show Yourself, and that song is all about her discovering what we now understand, I think, that her mother kind of suspected or maybe knew from the moment that her powers showed up, that like that's who she was, like right. That she is the fifth spirit that is going to keep the balance and sort of right this wrong that their grandfather set into motion, right? When he threw the world out of balance. Wow, there's a lot of parallels into Star Wars in this story. Man, oh man, that's crazy. Yeah, so like that to me is like that's the heart of the movie. And then the other element is Anna's story of being brought down from a place where she thinks she's got everything she ever wanted to realizing that I said to Crystal, it's like the three of them are in a really unhealthy codependent relationship that like they require each other in order to feel fulfilled. Right. Like, and it's Anna and Kristoff's stories kind of parallel each other in this way, because Kristoff, I think in the beginning is like, I gotta propose because I love her. So he's just like, it's just the idea of I've got to propose because I love her, and not the idea of she completes him as a person. Like she makes him a better man than he is on his own. And right. That's why they like he wants to marry her, right? And that's sort of where he ends up, is like, it's like, oh, and he's very selfish about it at the beginning. He's like, every time I try and propose to her, she just shrugs me off because she goes running off in some new direction. And it's like, and that's what his song is about. And by the end of it, he realizes like, no, you marry her because she's your better half, not because she's a possession, right? Like it's super subtle. It's really, really between the lines because Kristoff's not a bad guy, right? Like, so it's really hard to sort of put him in the position of like, for us to paint him, especially because he was meant to be the opposite of Hans in the first movie, who is that guy who's like, at first he's like, I'm going to marry this girl just so that I can take this position of power. And then later he's like, you know what? I don't need to marry either of them. I'll just murder both and take Arendelle for myself. But then Kristoff is like the opposite of that, where he's like this very selfless, heroic guy. And so you put him in that position of like, they kind of have to like really subtly insert that subtext of he's thinking of her as something to like, as a goal to achieve and not as a partner in his life. And that's what, by the end of it, because one of the lyrics is he says like, she is true north, and then like she's his only landmark, so he's lost in the woods, right?
Right.
And like that's him saying like it goes from like the unhealthy codependent to the proper like sort of partnership idea of like the unhealthy codependent is the beginning of the song where he's like you're off again, and I guess that's fine. Where he's like, I guess I'll just wait here for you when you come back. And it's like, that's a very selfish, very sort of resentful perspective. And then by the end of it, he's like, no, like, I'm hurt right now because without you, I feel lost.
Right. Yeah.
That's a me thing. So what I have to do is I have to tell you how much you mean to me. And that's the important part. It's not what I wear or how I like what ceremony I use to propose. It's like, it's how I feel inside that's important. And at the end, when he proposes, he does it properly, where he's just like, there's not a better moment for me to say that I couldn't live without you. Please marry me. Right. And it becomes a very simple proposal in the end. But then for Anna, it's sort of like her aspect, her codependency is much more related to Elsa, of like, she lived without her for so long, shut out, that now that she has her, it's like, if there's something wrong, you have to tell me, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it very much mirrors the relationship with like a family member or a friend or a loved one that has like a mental health issue or something like that, where once they get help and everybody's kind of like aware of this, whatever it is, whether it's depression or anxiety or whatever, that people around them will then like kind of treat them with kid gloves and be like, are you okay? Like, are you sure this isn't, are you sure you're not having like an anxiety attack or something? Because if you are, like, I'll help. And that attitude can almost be like, it's almost like suffocating to the person who's actually just trying to deal with their own problems.
Right.
And it's like, well, if I ask you for help, then help. Otherwise, right, like let me handle it myself. Mm-hmm. Which is definitely their dynamic in this story. And it's her kind of having to, Anna has to be broken down and really like brought to her lowest point in order to realize that her strength shouldn't come from Elsa or Kristoff or even Olaf, but it needs to come from inside her, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what her song is about. When she sings the next right thing, like that's, and Crystal talked about it afterwards, very much so, like it really like mirrors depression and sort of that, like the crippling, like, so depression, anxiety, like all of that sort of stuff, where it's like, it's really hard to when you're in a depressive mode to like think of getting out of it.
Yeah.
But the first step is taking the first step, right? Which is true. Honestly, like I think that's true of basically anything. But yeah, like her song definitely mirrors that sort of a headspace. Like I said, this one's not really a kids movie. Olaf's got a cute song, but and there's like everything's kind of fun in the same way that Frozen is fun, but Frozen's a very simple story. This movie is like there is no antagonist in Frozen 2. Even the Earth Giants never really antagonize them. They're just a threat. But they're not malicious as much as they're just like they just do what they do. But then by the end they're happy and tame and all of that sort of stuff. But there really is there's no specific antagonist for sure. And even like Frozen kind of was a little bit waffly on that. By the end it's revealed that Hans is an antagonist, but it's like it's for such a brief part of the movie that the first half of that movie you're like there's no bad guy here, it's just a situation, right? But with this one it's like that never resolves. It's like I thought I was really expecting Sterling K. Brown's character, when Anna told him, for him to be like, I know. Right. Like for the revelation that the grandfather, right. And I actually found it really refreshing that he's like, well, you're royalty. So like we serve you I thought that I was protecting the prince and the king, but like if you say that he was actually the bad guy in all of this, then I trust you and I'm going to protect you now. Right. Like I thought that was really refreshing rather than go down the other route, which would have, I think, been a little bit more of a trope of the like, yeah, I know I've been, maintaining that lie for however many years it's been. So yeah, but I don't know. I feel like I've now talked a lot about Frozen 2 and you haven't talked as much. So talk some more about it. Which song's your favorite song?
Well, I mean, the Into the Unknown obviously was fantastic, but I will say I thought that the like Find Me or Find You or Who Are You or whatever that song was that she sings as she's going into the cave. Yeah.
Show yourself.
Show yourself. Because at first I was like, how is this a song about anything? And then I realized, like, when you realize that, like, she's asking to find herself, right? That you're like, oh, there's so many meanings to this song, which is cool. Because when I was first watching it, I didn't think Into the Unknown was like the big showstopper. I thought it was that one because it came later in the movie, and just in my brain, like that was the song for me. And then afterwards I was like, oh no, it's Into the Unknown, obviously. But I still think Show Yourself was quite it's a really cool and beautiful song. Like I think everything in that ice cave, what was it? I don't know. There's just so much stuff where I was like, oh my God, this was so expensive and it's so beautiful and it pays off. And like, that was like a fun, I think for the people making it, that seems like a pretty fun sequence because it was less grounded in reality, right? Like they just got to sort of do like some cool backgrounds and all sorts of stuff.
It's similar to Let It Go. It's the moment when she really like
figures out who she is,
uses her powers to the fullest extent, and really just kind of goes crazy with all of the different ice powers all at once. Yeah. Now, okay. It's been a little while since I saw the movie, obviously. We saw it opening weekend. We saw it the first moment that we had the opportunity, which was the Saturday morning at 11 a.m. So it's been a little while since I've seen it. And I feel like there's a moment where she goes up to an ice wall and it kind of like defrosts, and then like during Show Yourself, and then it's her looking back at her, right?
Right.
Is that in the movie? That's in the movie, right?
The wall defrosts itself?
It's like a frosty wall, and then it like turns into a mirror, basically.
Maybe. Oh yeah, like during the that seems to recall something like that, but it's not until she actually like realizes who she is, because it would be way later on, because honestly she doesn't realize that it's her until after the actual reveal of like the spirits or whatever. Like,
but it was either in Frozen or it was in something else that I was watching, but it was like,
I mean, that definitely happens.
That's straight out of Last Jedi.
That is the one that happens in Last Jedi. But you might be right as well in this one. And oh my gosh, best thing ever. Wait, no, I already said this on the previous thing, but my favorite moment in the movie was actually part of the audience when the little girl in the front row, when they find out that the woman that saved the dad was the mom, and she goes, "I knew it." And everybody like looks at her, and it's just like really cute to like watch things in the context that like it's what makes. And I talk about this, I feel like I have talked about this before, about the idea of like, what is the point of going to see something in a big group of people when you could just see it at home? And really it is like that like community viewing experience. And what do you get out of like going with people and like seeing it as like a communal audience experience?
Yeah. We went with Curtis and his wife Katie and their 3 kids, Peter, Milo, and Samantha. Who, if you listen to Disney Dad's Cartoon Afternoon, you know Peter and Milo from that podcast, because they do their podcast within a podcast over there. Nice. No, we haven't put out an episode in a very long time, but we went with them because Samantha, their youngest, is 8 months older than Kara. And
it's adorable. They're adorable.
Yeah,
kids.
They are super cute together. And we kind of do things at like our 2 families together, because they're actually Katie and Curtis are Cassie's godparents, so I kind of act as a big family when we go out. So it was like, okay, Disney movie, and Curtis and I had decided this a little while ago, when. Like, we should all just go to Disney movies together. Like, we all love Disney movies. Like, the whole family loves Disney movies. So let's, when the next one comes out, let's all go together. And so when I got tickets for Frozen 2, I was like, hey, I just bought tickets. You guys should get tickets too. So they did. So we all went together, and Kara and Cass and Samantha sat next to each other. We had 8 seats all because Cassie didn't come with us. So we had 8 seats total. There were 4 in one row and then 4 right behind that row. So the girls all sat in the row in the front. So it was like Crystal and then Kara and then Samantha and then Katie, and then Curtis and I sat with the boys behind them. And of course, Kara and Samantha held hands the entire time. It was the greatest.
That's so cute.
But there's the moment when Olaf is lost. He's like separated from the group, and he's calling out for everybody. And he's like, Anna, Elsa, Kristoff, Sven, Samantha, and like. The 8 of us all like looked at each other of like, did Olaf just yell out for Samantha? And then he's like, wait a second, I don't even know a Samantha. And it was so good. It was such a, and like you say, like if we hadn't all gone to the movie together to watch it together, we wouldn't have experienced that moment with them. Right. So, it's movies are always better with friends, with the exception of super depressing or really dark movies where you don't want to be judged for how much you enjoy them. I feel like going to see Joker by myself was probably the right move. The movies like that where it's like, you know what, I'm not gonna bring Crystal to this. I don't think that she would like it. I guess that may have been an enjoyable experience with another human being, but
it's fine that you didn't need to. I thought.
No, but like I feel that the majority of movies definitely benefit from being viewed, at least on the first viewing, with other people. I mean, like for Rise of Skywalker, I've got my tickets for my first 2 showings. The first one, obviously, being that opening night on the Thursday night, and Amanda, you'll be there as well.
Yeah.
But then my second screening is for the Saturday morning with Kara to take her. But then, and I don't have tickets for it yet, but I will probably buy tickets for either the Sunday or the Monday. Ticket, I should
go
say.
By yourself? Yeah, because you go by yourself,
yeah,
right?
And I'll just go by myself without any distraction so that
Mm-hmm.
I can do my personal, like, view it and like dig into it on my own without being concerned about anybody else around me. Because even just like being with Crystal, it's even still like, is she enjoying the movie? Right? Like, oh, do you want some popcorn? Do you want some of these Sour Patch? Because like, there's just that little stuff that like when I'm by myself, I can really just like zone in. But like I said, that's for like the third viewing. I'm much more excited to watch it with all of our friends on the Thursday night, and then to watch it with Kara. It'll be Kara's first Star Wars movie in the theater. Woo-hoo. She's seen Force Awakens. She's seen Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Empire, and Return of the Jedi. We haven't watched any other ones. It's
interesting.
Yeah. Maybe we'll watch a Star Wars movie this weekend. I don't know. We're never home anymore. It's the holidays. Crystal has got stuff planned every day from now until January 1st, and I'm just like,
that's hilarious. I get to see Kara on Saturday.
Yes.
She's hanging out with me. And my dad actually like remembered, because I told him that she was coming over, but he thought that she was over last Saturday because he was confused because I went to the symphony, and he's like, you took Kara to the symphony? And I was like, no, I did not take her to the symphony. But I was like, oh man, maybe I should take her to the ballet or something. But I kind of just want to watch Frozen. So I don't know, hopefully if she's seen it too many times. But maybe we can watch
you will be fine with that. You will be fine watching Frozen with her. I love that Kara is such an important part of your life that your parents are like concerned with like, you took a 3-year-old to the symphony. And it's like, I really appreciate the concern, because it's like, I maybe unchecked, you might take Kara to the symphony. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But it's funny to me that you obviously talk about her enough to your parents that
I do. Yeah,
they know her and know that she's coming for a sleepover. It's a big deal. This is her first sleepover other than at grandma's. So
I'm very excited. I have done garbage with my Christmas shopping. I have a Secret Santa on Friday that's happening that I like have not bought a present for. So I'm like just really hoping nothing goes wrong tomorrow and I can go do it after work. But I have definitely like over the last like few weeks been buying like little things here and there where I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun to do with Kara at my house. So it's just like little things that we can do. But I don't know. I feel like I've lost some of them because I've like got them over the course. But like I need to actually buy like real presents now because instead I'm just like, no, I'll get this little thing for Kara. And then I'm like, but now I have no actual Christmas gift for her because it's all just stuff that I'm like, no, I'm going to be the fun aunt and we're going to do all these things. She's going to think my house is full of presents for her. So
you know what? She thinks that she is just spoiled rotten.
Yes.
And she actually said to us tonight, when we got home, we were talking about, and on Saturday's a packed day. On Saturday we're going to Bubby and Papa's to ice cookies in the morning. Like, we're starting our morning, like the first place we have to be is like 10 a.m. We got to be at my parents to ice sugar cookies for Santa Claus and whatnot. And then after that, we're gonna go ice skating with my brother, with Uncle Anthony and Auntie Viola, and then after that, we're dropping her with you for her sleepover, and so we're going over this with her, because the most important part of having a toddler is managing expectations. Right. So you need to start telling them what they're going to be doing 3 days before they have to do it, because then like you get them hyped up for it, so they forget to be scared of like, oh, I'm staying at somebody's house for the first time. That's not, somebody that I see 5 times a week.
Yeah.
So like, there's that element of it. It's like, just get her so excited for it that she doesn't even think like,
to be scared,
where's mommy, where's daddy, like that sort of thing. But so like, we're prepping her for it and telling her what to expect on Saturday and how crazy a day it's going to be. and she says, can we go and can we buy an Anna pajamas? She calls them pajamas because she's an adorable 3.5-year-old. We buy Anna pajamas for my sleepover.
Aww.
And Crystal and I were both instantly like, no. This kid has like 15 pairs of pajamas. She doesn't need another pair of pajamas. And we just bought her Elsa pajamas because her friend had a birthday party a couple weeks ago, and the theme of the birthday party, it was first thing in the morning sort of thing. Like it was like at 10 a.m. and it was a pajama brunch birthday party. So they had like, the cake was a donut cake. Like it was
nice. It
sounded like a really good birthday party, but I don't particularly want to spend my morning at a 3-year-old's birthday party. So I opted out, but yeah, like, so she just got a brand new pair of very fancy Elsa pajamas that even has like a little tutu. Have you seen it? Did you see it when you were over?
You guys send me photos of her wearing different things a lot, so it's quite possible that possible. I do have a photo of it. Yeah. So
yeah, it's like, yeah, no, you don't need to. We're not buying you another pair of, again, like, and the Disney ones. I mean, I guess if we went to Walmart, they're probably cheaper, but at the Disney store, it's like a pair of toddler pajamas is like $30. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like a special thing, and she's under the impression that if you're gonna go somewhere to sleep over, you need to go buy a brand new pair of pajamas. And I don't know where she gets that from.
She's a girl after my own heart. Yeah. I tell you, it's good. She's got the right idea.
Despite the fact that she loves Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters. She's on a real Ghostbusters kick right now because we watched the trailer.
Nice.
You know, I Star Wars, all of the stuff that I have purposefully exposed her to and gotten her excited about, that is all very, I think, boy-centric stuff, like male-coded, let's say, to use the 2019 terminology. Despite all of that, and some might even say my best efforts, she is such a girly girl. And the weird part about that is that Crystal is not a girly girl. So it's not coming from me. It's not coming from Crystal. So Crystal and I have talked about it many times. The only place it could possibly be coming is from Auntie Mandy. So this weekend she's going to come back afterwards, and she's going to be asking for gold-plated diamond tiaras. And
oh, we should wear a tiara. That's a good idea.
See? Yeah.
No, good. I love it. It's a good influence.
Awesome.
It could be that society sucks and she's getting exposed to a lot of female-coded imagery in society as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'll happily take blame for a little bit of Kara's personality. She's lovely.
But we do work on it. We do our best to make sure that as much as she's a girly girl, that she knows not to take any gruff from the patriarchy.
Good job, lady.
Yeah.
Good job.
Cool. Well, the only other thing that I will say, and we don't need to talk about it in detail, we'll talk about it on Quiver when we're back in January, but I've just got YouTube open to the homepage, and there's the Smallville scene from the Crisis crossover. Yeah. And I just want to remark on a podcast tonight that it's perfect. I know that there's some people who are mad that he gave up his powers. There are some people who literally take the position that Lex Luthor takes in that scene. But yeah, I love it. I love that he's that. I guess this is spoilers if you're not caught up on Crisis, but yeah, Clark from Smallville gives up his powers so that he can have kids with Lois and just raise their kids on the farm, and that's so perfect.
I came off of so I've been podcasting since 6:00. This has been like a 5-hour podcast.
You're having a mic day.
I'm having a mic day. Yeah, it's weird. But I will say, actually, the crossover podcast we did today was really good. Like, I think it's one of my favorites that I've been on so far. It was really just well run. and like the comments and stuff are really good. But a real big part of it is that I can't remember who it was making the comments, but their favorite part about the Smallville thing is that literally like the motto for Smallville for so long was no flights, no tights, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that you have this hero who didn't want to be Superman. And so somebody said on the podcast, and it made me open my eyes a little bit to it, where I was like, oh, that makes sense. Where Clark finally got what he wanted. He doesn't have superpowers anymore. He's just a regular dude.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, if people are like, that's contrary, like, what is the point of Smallville? Then it's like, well, no, he didn't want to be Superman. He never aspired to be Superman. He was Clark Kent. Like, the show was about Clark Kent and like, finding out about Kal-El and
look at the interesting result of him not having powers is that his Lex Luthor, the Michael Rosenbaum Lex, is president, but he doesn't seem to really have a problem with that. And Lex doesn't seem to have a problem with Clark. So maybe, as we've talked about many times with the character of Lex Luthor, in the absence of Superman to take up all of his mental space, he actually just like makes the world a better place. Lex actually becomes a hero
because he's like, well, I know I won. Superman, like maybe here's my own canon now, fanship canon, that Clark let Lex take his powers so that Lex would become a better like human and Clark would get everything he wanted. But anyways, and there's something really poignant to the fact too that he has girls. Like it's really cool.
Yeah. I'm gonna choose to believe that that he and Lex, after a couple of years of fighting it out, that eventually Clark like realizes like, wait a second, what am I doing? This is my friend.
Yeah.
He needs help, not he needs me to help him, not fight him.
Yeah.
And he like reveals that he's Superman, and then through all of that, it's like they come to terms, like they work it out, and Lex becomes a better person because of it, because he has the support of the brother that he always wanted.
Yeah.
And so that piece of him that he felt was missing is now whole. And then Superman's like, I don't need to be Superman because the world is safe in your hands as the president, and so he gives up his powers and goes, and it's like, and Uncle Lex visits every once in a while. And that would mirror the relationship, not that the relationship between Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling was ever rocky, but like they were on this show for so long, and then he left and Tom kept doing the show, and then they were friends but didn't really hang out. And then in the last couple of years they started hanging out like through podcasts and stuff and doing conventions together all the time. And so like that, now they're like best buds again, and it's like, I would love it if the Smallville storyline mirrored that real life story of these two guys being pals.
And the brilliance of it being so short is that it can.
Exactly.
We can just imagine that that's what it is. But
and Clark has, like she says, Lois says girls, so I mean like that could be, it's any plural, anything more than two or more. But I'm gonna choose to believe that, in the same way that I have two daughters, Clark Kent and Lois Lane, the best Clark Kent and Lois Lane, also have two daughters, just like Crystal and I do, and that's why the world is perfect, and Smallville is the best Superman story ever.
And that the little girls play with the dump trucks in the dirt. I do like that as like an implied like. Anyways, it's very cool. It's very cute. I don't know. It was so unnecessary to the story, and I don't even care. I'm here for it.
It was perfectly satisfying because at the end of all of that, which is, I won't want to say anticlimactic, but the build up to, oh my God, we're going to see Smallville Clark Kent again. Smallville Clark Kent is Tom Welling, so exciting. And then for it to be like, I don't have any powers. And then Lex gets so mad about it. And then and then he goes to punch him, and when he just catches his hand and decks him and he just goes flying backwards, it's like, I'm still stronger. It's so satisfying, because that's what I say that about Clark Kent all the time. There are stories where it's like, oh, and he goes back to Krypton and he's just a regular guy. And I'm always like, yeah, a regular guy that's 6'4" and like 3 feet wide. like 4 feet wide for Clark Kent, like especially for the Tom Welling Clark Kent. Like he still looks like a linebacker.
Yeah.
So, and you're still John Cryer. Like,
yeah.
You can try and punch him. He's still going to beat the snot out of you. But he doesn't have to. All he has to do is punch you once and then you run away crying. So I love that. I love that Lex Luthor in that moment, the most despicable one, I think. John Cryer is actually really good as Lex. The most despicable Lex on screen. He can't even defeat a powerless Superman. So how grumpy is that going to make him in future encounters with Superman? But yeah, that's it for this episode. That's it for Thunderquack Podcast for 2019. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I'm done podcasting now until the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, actually, we should probably do.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to do our Rise of Skywalker thing right away, unless we just want to do a spoiler cast for Rise of Skywalker and then do the ranked after we've both had the chance to see it a few more times.
I think that's a good, because I'm gonna definitely like make my family go to it over Christmas as well as watch it a couple more times with friends. So let's do it in the new year.
Okay. Cool. So everybody have a fun and safe and happy holiday. Just so you all know, everybody is having stress and anxiety about having to see family. So you are not alone. Everybody has to deal with it. Even people with functional families like Amanda. I'm sure she's still got her own stuff that she doesn't want to deal with when she goes home. So yeah, you're not alone. And I know that's the toughest part of the holidays for a lot of people is going home, and it's sort of the double-edged sword of, it's great to see family, but man, does it suck seeing family.
Yeah. And also, and for those some people, the stress and anxiety is because they don't have the family to go back to. And that's just like, it's a stressful time. We understand it, but there's always somebody that's in a similar situation to you, which is kind of nice. And, and it's like a nice reprieve to realize that you're not alone in your feelings.
And if you're listening to this, you're part of the Thunderquack family. So, you're fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that very saccharine holiday message, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the next Thunderquack podcast.
Bye.